What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Trick 10s. This is part 5 of this well-built 1448 tournament John boat build. Now, I'm really glad that last episode was over because that was a pain in the butt. The rod locker just adds a whole nother step and a whole nother stage of the build. It's not like it's difficult or really hard. It just takes a little bit more time. And it's something that a lot of my customers just don't have the budget for. Now, to add a rod locker into the build, it's gonna be about $1,000. Same thing with the Livewell. I tell people that all the time. They're like, oh, well, I want a simple build. All I want is a Livewell, some storage compartments, maybe a rod locker, a back deck, a floor. I'm like, you're not simple now. Like, a simple build would just be if I put like one hatch in here and a floor. The easiest way to gauge this type of stuff, even if you do it yourself, you know, all the pumps and everything with the Livewell, the lid, the framing, you're gonna spend at least $1,000 to get a nice Livewell set up that's gonna do what you need it to do. Same thing with the rod locker. By the time you buy the big hatch and, you know, all the aluminum to build it out and frame it and sheet it and carpet or turtle, whatever you're gonna put in, you're easily gonna spend $1,000 on that. So you figure that's $2,000 just in the rod locker and in the Livewell. Then everybody's like, well, I want to do my back deck. Well, you see how the back deck is set up here? It's how all the boats are set up that I build for the most part. I think this is the best way to do it. I mean, you got two big storage compartments here, one in the back. Again, you're probably looking at another $1,000 just to do this right here. So that's $3 grand into the build just with your back deck, the Livewell, and the rod locker. Then you got the whole front deck. If you want to add another storage compartment, you want to have, you know, electrical panels and stuff like that, it gets pricey quick. Realistically, you know, if you're looking at getting your whole boat set up similar to this without the rod locker, you're looking around $5 grand by the time it's all said and done. And if you want to buy the hatches yourself, you know, you're probably looking at half of that just to get the hatches. So I'm going to leave an itemized list in this video for all the material I use because I'm actually going to install this deck permanently. I'm going to have the rod locker completely finished in this video and the Livewell is going to be installed. So all those things I'll list itemized prices for. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to get this Livewell finished up. So these hatches in this deck, it's just sitting up here. This thing is not connected at all. So I'm going to take these hatches out, I'm going to take this deck out, and I'm going to get the drain figured out for the Livewell. I'm going to install that permanently, and then I'm going to try to figure out the box frame for the side of this. Because I want to make this whole piece right here for the Livewell, the pan, I'm just going to make one big pan. I mean, it's just going to be a trough. Just like the piece I put in the front, except it's just going to be a three-sided trough, like a big channel. And it's going to drop all the way across here. I'm probably going to shove some foam up in the back side of it and stuff to keep it, you know, from rattling or just to add some flotation into the boat. I'm going to make it out of one piece because I don't want to have any seams or anything like that in it. And it's only 6 foot, so there's no reason I can't make it out of one piece. So after I finish up that rod locker, I'm going to install this front deck, and I'll also do all the plumbing on the Livewell. And after I get done with that, I'm going to move on to the back deck. I mean, the back deck is pretty much done. These hatches just have to be installed into the bench, but around this hatch right here, I've got to frame these corners and I've got to frame around the back on these 3 sides of this hatch that's going to go right here. And then that will pretty much wrap up all of the metal work. I mean, the only other thing I got to do is a little bit up front to put some type of trolling motor mount. I'm going to throw a bracket on the back just so he can install the transducer off the transom. I'm going to get all that stuff finished up in this video. Then this boat's going to go and get painted. Then we can start putting this thing together. Let's get back to work. All right, so you can see what I did here. I basically just staged this Livewell. I went ahead and threw a couple of rivets back up in this front deck on either side just to hold it in place so I can get this deck at the right height. Because when I finish this Livewell, I want this lid right here for the frame. See how it's right up against it? Well, I can pull this up tight. So when I put that in, I can put a layer of 5200 in between here. It will sandwich in and it will make it like a completely sealed unit. That way water doesn't splash back out on either side of it. I did notice something though. If you see up here, there's a gap right there in that piece of wood. And back here, it's low. I noticed this immediately when this boat came to me. This back bench seat is sloped really bad. I mean, you can see it in the weld right there. It's really dropping down. I was hoping it wasn't gonna be an issue, but I think it might be. I think what I'm gonna end up having to do, which I really don't wanna do, is just a whole lot more work, but I gotta make this thing look right. The worst case scenario would be that I have to cut this. I'm gonna cut this whole weld out. I'm gonna cut this all the way across the front of this bench. I'm gonna have to bring this up. And if I do that, then I have to replace the inside of that with some type of angle, probably a 1.5, 1/8 angle, and run it the full length. Then I have to weld that back in. I really hope I don't have to do that, but it's looking like I might have to. For the sake of getting this live well installed, I know where the live well is at, because right now I have 1 inch of space from the front of this angle to the live well, which puts it 2.5 inches from this rib back. So as long as I keep that 2.5 inches consistent in here, I can go ahead and put the drain in the live well. And what I'll do is weld the pipe onto the bottom of the live well, and then I'll put a hole in the bottom of the boat, and I'll just let that drop down in there. Then once I get this deck figured out, I can always come back and I'll reach over top of here with a clamp. I'll clamp that live well up in there, and then I'll get it at the height I need it. Then I'll come back and I'll cut off that pipe in the bottom of the boat, and I'll weld it solid from underneath. But I gotta put this live well in here before I can get this whole deck figured out, because it drops down below these floor ribs. And I'll never be able to fit it in here if I go ahead and install this deck first. Getting that thing installed with the pipe and leaving it long will allow me to move it vertically up and down, and it will give exactly what I need. So I'm gonna go ahead and get that done, and then I'm gonna bring home some longer angles tomorrow. I'm gonna run some angles all the way across from this front to back bench, and that way I can figure out exactly what I gotta do, because this thing has to be streamlined completely down this whole entire side, or it's gonna look funny, because what's gonna happen is it's gonna dip down. Either I'm gonna gently taper it the entire way down, or I'm gonna end up having to cut this and bringing this up so it can sit flat across here. Either way, we got to get this live well done. I'm gonna go ahead and pull this deck and stuff out of here. I'm gonna get the hole in the bottom of this live well. I'm gonna show you how I do that when we get the drain welded in there. Let's get back to work. Woo-wee! It is cold out here tonight, boy. I'm telling you what, it's like 35 degrees out here. That's how that VA weather works though. It'll be 70 degrees, next day it's 50, and then it's just 30. And it's 35 degrees out here tonight, and it's not gonna get warmer in no time soon. It's gonna stay like this the rest of the year. Probably on until February, March, it's gonna start to warm up a little bit. So I had to bust my heater out tonight because I am freezing out here. But I'm getting ready to cut this hole in this live well. Let's flip this camera around, I'll show y'all what I got. All right, so this is my live well. I put a cross break in here to help the water drain. This hole is off center. That mark was wrong because I forgot that these top lips were different when I measured this. I'm gonna move this down about 1 inch. I'm gonna put a hole right here. It's gonna be 2.5 inches off the center. It'll still drain, and I'm actually gonna recess this with a punch. I'll show you that in just a second. But the reason I gotta off center it is because these well belts are 2-piece boats. So this is my center rib right here. And if you look at this, it's got a weld seam in there. So there's one piece up here and up the side, and up here and up the side, and it's welded completely down the center. I don't want to drop my drain right to the bottom of this hole, because I'm going to have to deal with this whole V right here. So I'm going to set it off to the side 2.5 inches. That way my hole can be mounted into this flat section right here. Now I'm going to cut the hole into this live well first. Then I'm going to take this live well and drop it right back in there, get it staged up exactly where I need it. Then I'll mark through the bottom of this live well and draw a hole in the bottom of the hole. Then I can take the live well out, cut the hole through the bottom of the boat. Then I will recess this punch in here, and I will install the pipe on the bottom of that. Let's get back to work. All right, so I went ahead and drilled a 1 1/4 inch hole into the bottom of this live well. Now I'm putting a 1 inch Schedule 40 aluminum pipe in here. So the outside measurement of that pipe is about 1 1/4. The ID is 1 inch, which is very similar to the same drain plug that you use on your transom of the boat. That's exactly how we're gonna seal this thing from inside of the live well. But what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna recess this. This is something that I do on a lot of the live wells that I sell. It's basically just for the live well drain plug if you wanted to use a plastic piece. we're not using a plastic piece. The only reason I'm doing this is because I want to show you guys how it works, for one, and for two, it's still going to help with drainage because it's going to drop it down about 1/4 of an inch. Now this right here, this is a jig that I made. This thing is stupid simple. It's basically like a press. This is a 1 1/4 inch bolt in the center of this. It's got a nut on top of it and a washer, and I made these plates and this little piece of pipe right here. And what's going to happen is when this is tightened up into that hole, it will suck it down and it will make the aluminum bend like a recessed pan. It's kind of like the sink drain in your kitchen. You ever looked at your sink drain, you ever replace that thing? It's recessed in, it sinks down, it helps everything drain. Now this is perfect if you're going to use a plastic Livewell drain. We're not doing that, but either way, it's still going to be cool. I'm going to put this in here. I'm going to show you exactly how I do this. Let's get back to work. All right, so you see what that did? It's stupid simple. I mean, I made that little piece to do this in like 30 minutes, and this is something that is very cool. It's very important because if you were going to put a plastic fitting in here, then your plastic fitting is going to sit up like 1/4 inch above this bottom of this Livewell. But with this recessed piece, it makes it sit flush. Now, any of the water that sits in here, it will drain out. If it was sitting up above it, 1/4 inch, then you'd have 1/4 inch of water always in your Livewell that would never get out of here. It would never drain. I don't have to worry about that because I'm not putting a plastic fitting here. I'm going to weld a through hole fitting. It's going to go through this Livewell into the bottom of the hole. I'm going to weld it all the way around here. I'm also going to weld it around the backside just to make sure this thing is super strong. Then I'm going to drill a hole to the bottom of the boat right here, and I'm going to run that pipe all the way to the bottom. I'm going to leave it long. I'm going to come back and cut it off later because I got to figure out this deck height with the way this back bench seat is tapered and stuff. I need to figure all that out, but I wanted to have this Livewell installed at least in the position it's going to be from a bird's eye view. Then it can still move vertically. I got to keep this thing streamlined. It's got to be perfect. Let's get back to work. Alright guys, so I'm going to share a quick tip of the trade. This is something my dad taught me a while ago, but it comes in handy. It's very simple. Anybody who's a welder fabricator knows that when you try to weld metal together, they're going to want to pull away from each other just due to the heat. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run this 4.5 inch bolt through this Livewell drain and up into the Livewell. I've got washers on either side. They're going to hold it, and what I'm going to do is tighten this up. It's going to suck it in tight. That will allow me to tack it without the metal pulling away. It's very simple. If you're a fabricator, you probably already know this. But if not, then I hope you appreciate my pop's knowledge. It's sucked in perfectly. That will hold it nice and tight. I can come back and put a couple tacks on this back side. Then I'll come back and weld the interior flush. Then I'll weld this whole entire outside flush. I really want this Livewell drain to be very strong and a permanent because it's going to be sunk into the bottom of this boat. This thing is never coming out of here. I mean, if there's a chance that somehow this thing cracked, I can always come back and re-weld it from the top, but I'm going to make sure that doesn't happen. Let's go ahead and get this thing welded up and drop it into the boat. Let's get back to work. right, so now I got this Livewell drain in here, and this thing is installed. It's welded solid all around the top and on the inside. Let me show you guys the inside of this. It looks really good. I mean, there's a super clean weld inside of here. I really enjoy laying dimes on clean aluminum like this, especially with that recessed insert like that. It's gonna make a world of difference when you're draining this Livewell. I'm gonna go ahead and set this thing in and drop it to the bottom of the hull. Let's drop it in here. Perfect. Now I'm gonna get this front deck in here. Let's get back to work. All right, so I got the front deck attached with a couple of rivets, and I laid these angles up here. These are basically just like a straight edge from my front deck to my rear deck, just to try to figure out exactly what I'm doing and to make sure everything's streamlined. And I'm really kind of disappointed because this boat is actually put together poorly. I mean, whoever put this thing together, I'd love to come through the camera and smack your ass, because this is going to entail me doing a lot more work. Now, I could just run with it. I mean, this piece of angle right here, I laid this up here, and this one from here back doesn't look bad. It just gradually slopes down. But the thing of it is, right here, we have a 1/2 inch of space. And I just can't let that fly. I really don't want to do all this extra work, but I think I'm gonna have to. I mean, there's really nothing I can do with the front deck. I mean, if you look here, this front deck, let me move this drill out the way. The front deck it's like got a huge gap in it right there. But I mean, what can we do with that? This piece right here, you see how it's bent at like it's not a 90 down here, it's probably more like a 75 or something. They should have bent this tighter. This should have been bent damn near probably to a 90-degree angle, and this entire deck could have been pushed down about another 1/2 inch. And that's exactly what they needed to keep this whole thing streamlined. Since they didn't do that, I'm not gonna do all that. That is gonna entail entirely too much work. But what I am gonna do is I'm gonna cut this damn back bench out, and it just makes a lot more work for me. But if I'm gonna build this boat, I'm already so far into it, and there's so much cool shit going into this build that it's gotta be perfect. So I'm gonna cut this across the weld on either side right here. Then I'm gonna cut it all the way across the face of it. And I'm gonna bring this front up so that it's flush right here. That way, it's still gonna be tapering forward in the front deck from where the existing deck is, but at least the stuff that I put in here will be one streamline all the way to the back of the transom. And it's not gonna be that noticeable up there. I mean, there's so much going on in this boat. It's gonna be loud as crap, especially with the turf and stuff in here. So I'm not stressing it too much, but it would be nice if it was perfect. It would definitely make my job a whole lot easier. The one thing that makes me feel like I have to do this is the distance from this bench seat to the transom. It's short. And you can see there's a 1/2 inch right here between this, 17-inch back bench. A 1/2 inch and 17 inches is a lot. It's gonna be seen to the naked eye. I would pick up on something like that immediately, but they will see it, they'll notice it. If it was a 1/4 inch, maybe not so much, but a 1/2 inch, it's gonna stand out like a sore thumb. And the main thing that's gonna make it stand out is the fact that this one's gonna be sloping up, and then from here, this one's gonna have to slope down, because if I kept that same angle coming up, this back bench would actually be flush with the transom or above it. We can't have that. I'm gonna put you guys back in the time lapse. I gotta get some tunes on. I wish YouTube would let me share my music with you guys, because I like music. Tonight I'm feeling some Jadakiss. I'm gonna put on some old school Jadakiss, some Styles P, some D Block. I got some cutting to do and grinding, so let's get to it. Let's get back to work. All right, so I just opened this back bench seat up like a can of sardines. Now I get a lot of customers that stop by the shop every day. They want to talk about a boat build, and I'll look at their build, I'll give them a price, and I'll tell them what I plan to do with it and how I can do it and stuff like that. And if I start talking about doing something like this, they will literally look at me with shock in their eyes like, oh my God, you can't cut that out. You can't do this. You're not capable of this. Like, this is a factory job. Like, yes, the deal is though, the dude that put this damn back bench seat in here, he probably hates his job. He is dreading seeing another boat come down the assembly line. He probably makes $18 to $25 an hour, not $75 an hour. And the reality of it is that not only can I do this, but I can do this 1,000 times better, probably in my sleep. That was a lot of work, a lot of cutting and grinding. I'm not happy about it, but it's done. So now the best part about this is that I get to get rid of these stupid wells that they put over here on the sides. I ground them flush. They were ugly as hell to begin with. Now they're gonna be welded by somebody who's a whole lot more capable and experienced in this field. So I'm gonna bring an angle inside of here, and you see this thing bowed all over the place. It's because it was just smashed in there and they just welded it together. But this is very pliable and flexible. I'll put it right where I need it to be. I was originally thinking about putting a 1.5 by 1.5 angle in here. The only problem with that is those angles are architectural extrusions. So they have a square 90 corner. This is not a square 90 corner. This is bent in a press brake. It has a little bit of radius to it. So if I'm gonna use a piece of stock angle extrusion, then I'm gonna have to cut this top off of here too, because I gotta get rid of this roller. I'm not gonna be able to suck it in there tight enough to make it work. Or what I think I'm gonna do is I'm probably just gonna bend a piece with a radius in it that matches up to this. That way I don't have to worry about cutting that out. It'll be a lot easier to hide it, and it's a lot less cutting, because I've already had enough cutting and I'm not really trying to do any more cutting. To make this as simple as possible though, this is gonna come up a 1/2 inch taller than it was originally, because I need that to make my entire deck streamlined. I'm gonna get this back deck staged up and figure out what I'm gonna do next. Let's get back to work. See what we got here. I cut the back deck, I raised it up about a 1/2 inch. I welded it, got some good welds in here. I might actually weld this whole middle section solid, come back and weld those couple spots, but I didn't want to put too much heat on it right now. I might end up warping. It is strong though. I mean, it's way stronger than it was originally, and it's gonna be perfect because with that backer angle in there, it's gonna allow me to have my piece coming in here. I'm gonna be able to shoot rivets all the way through there. I'm gonna have an angle coming up here to catch my rod locker hatch. And the same thing on the other side. That side's actually gonna have the electrical panel, and I'm thinking about not making it as big and bulky because this rod locker, it's gotta come out pretty good distance. The hatch is like a 10-inch drop-in hatch, so it needs to have 13 outside. So you're gonna lose a lot of floor space over here. I was thinking about making this side different. I was thinking about having maybe like a 5-inch flat section and then have it turned down at an angle. That way it kind of contours with the side of the boat. Very similar to what I did in the King Neptune build. And I'm gonna house this electrical panel switch down in this area right here. I think it'd be cool down there because you don't have to move your rods if they're laying on this deck to open up a hatch to turn on your Livewell or access any of the stuff in your electrical panel. Look at this though. I did get to cut out all those old ugly welds, which is pretty cool. Laid a nice bead down here. Same thing on the other side. This looks way better. I mean, this is the difference between a finesse TIG welder and some type of MIG pulse or something like that. But you can see that angle up inside of here. It's just sitting right in here. And when the hatch comes in too, honestly, I was already gonna put a piece of angle in there like that because when I get ready to install these hatches, I do that in these back benches. I run an angle all the way across here and here. Just so that when you install those rivets down into those hatches, it has something thicker to catch into. This is really thin, but now it's gonna go through this and through that angle. It'll be attached all the way around. I'm also gonna come back and probably put another piece in between here, just maybe just a plate or a little piece of channel to support across this middle right here to keep these hatches close. That way it'll support that center section once the hatches are installed. What I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna put these angles up here, basically frame out for my rod locker. Now, I'm gonna have an angle here, it's gonna sit like that, and one on the opposite side over here by the side of the hole. And I'm gonna frame this side out and try to get this thing framed out. You can see that back deck looks so much better. I mean, just coming off of here now, you know, that is like straight line. It's gonna be perfect. It's exactly what had to happen. And it's gonna make everything look so much nicer. I brought this up a 1/2 inch and it's spot on. I laid an angle across here just a second ago and it was perfectly straight. So I'm gonna go ahead and start figuring out some of the angles for this side right here and put you guys back on the time lapse. Let's get back to work. All right, so I was just talking about how I was gonna frame out this side panel with this 1.5 inch angle. Now, you gotta forgive me, it's been a while since I built out one of these John boats. My last 2 builds were the Stratos and then the Lunkers build. I didn't run into any issues like this in either one of those builds. Obviously, I know that I have to make this side piece. This is a very important piece. And I'm gonna tell you right now, if you need a piece like this, I'm gonna show you exactly how to measure it and how to draw it up and send me the measurements, and I will make the piece and send it right to your door. It's very hard to make this without the machinery and the tools that are required. So if you laid a piece of 1.5 inch angle up here on the side, just like this one is, then you came back with a framing square. You put it in your corner here, and you're gonna realize very quickly that you're gonna have a gap down here. Now this is about 3/4 of an inch, and then if this is only in 2 feet, if you run this all the way up to the front of this 40-inch section right here, you're looking more like 1.25 inch difference. So I cannot drop a square hatch in there if I put this piece in there. I make these top angles different for a reason. So if you take this piece of angle, lay it up here on the side of that, square it up with your back bench and your front bench, it may not be perfect. Split your difference and get it as close as you can. That's about what we need right there. You can take a tape measure from the point right here to the side of the hull, same thing in the front, from this point to the side of the hull. That's all I really need. And I can either bend it straight down at a 90 or kick it at any angle you want it. But this is the piece that I made right here. This one is like 1.75 inches up here, and it ends up being like 3.25 in the back. And this is 40.5 inches long from front to back deck. So I'm gonna set this right inside of here, flush up against the hull. And what that does is it gives me a square 90 corner here and in the front. So when I drop this hatch in, it will fit perfectly. I'm gonna cut this piece of angle right here, and I'm gonna drop it in on the other side, somewhere in this area right here, and that will allow me to drop that square hatch in there, and it should fit exactly the way I need it to. I'm gonna go ahead and put you guys back on the time lapse. I'm gonna get these installed. I also have another one made for the other side. It's a bit wider. I'll show you that in just a second. Let's get back to work. All right, so you can see what I was talking about. This piece of angle right here, this is the one that I bent. It's tapered. It's shorter at the front and longer at the back, but it fits perfectly up against the side of the hull, and it gives you a 90 corner on all of these corners right here. This is gonna recess the hatch in here, and it's gonna fit perfectly. Now I'm gonna put the other one on the other side, and that one's a little different. Take a look at this one. Now I did start bending this one the wrong way earlier. That's why it's got this little crease in here. Luckily I caught myself. I only bent it up at about like 10, 15 degrees, so I flattened it back out. It's got a little crease in there, but the turf's gonna hide all of that. This one is gonna sit up in here, just like this. You see this one's not as big as the other one, because that one takes up a lot of floor space. And this bend right here, it's not quite a 90. It's more like a 75. And what that's gonna do is bring this down on an angle. So it's not going straight up and down. It's going out. It's gonna kick out to the center of the boat. And that will allow me room that I'm gonna need to recess the pan in this hatch, and all the electrical is gonna stick through the pan, because it's gonna be pretty thick. I mean, this pan's gonna be at least 1.5 inches deep. Then you got 1.5 inches, 2 inches of space. You need to have some space in here. So this floor space is really gonna come out probably somewhere in here, about 1.5 inches, 2 inches away from here. Then in between these ribs, is where I'm gonna recess all these switches. That way I got more depth on them. It's gonna be really sick. Let's throw this hatch in here and see what it looks like. It's gonna be perfect. That's gonna be the rod locker. Now I just gotta build a pan for the inside of this. I'm gonna go ahead and get this one over here framed up and tacked on. Let's get back to work. All right guys, so we made some extreme modifications to this boat. Now this is not, you know, amateur level DIY stuff that you're gonna do at home in your garage. Now maybe if you're qualified and you're a welder and a fabricator, I wish you the best if you take on a project like this, because it's not easy. And the whole back bench seat being off level, it just threw a wrench into everything. It made me have to do a whole lot more work, and I didn't want to do it. And honestly, like that little bit of work I did into the back bench, it took me a couple of hours, and I would have probably had to charge somebody like $300 or $400 to do that. I just ate that because I wanted to do it right. I want to make this build top notch and next level, and it wasn't going to happen unless I did that. That was not in the budget. It was just something that I did because I felt like it had to be done. This thing is looking sick. Once it gets completely finished, I know that every ounce of energy and every hour and minute I put into this thing is going to pay for itself immensely, just because you guys are watching right now. The bottom line is, this video is getting kind of long, and I hate to call it right here because I really wanted to put a whole lot more metal. I wanted to finish the entire metalwork in this boat in this video, but that back deck just, it kind of killed my vibe, man. That thing made a whole lot more work for me, and it kind of dragged out what I was trying to finish up this weekend. And I've only got a couple days because this Sunday, we got a bunch of stuff going on at the shop. It's crazy. It's just a lot going on, especially with Thursday being Thanksgiving. We're gonna eat dinner with my family around noon. We're having an early Thanksgiving dinner. And as soon as we're done with that, I'm gonna pack the whole family up. We're gonna trailer to Stratos down to Lake Gaston. And on Friday, we're gonna eat Thanksgiving dinner with my wife's family. The cool thing about it is that we're gonna be on Lake Gaston. I'm bringing the Stratos. The Stratos is completely finished. I put all the rest of the metalwork in there, the dual grab bridge, the recessed foot pedal tray. It got completely wrapped, and it looks like an entirely different boat. You guys are gonna freak out when you see that video, and all you guys that were hating on me and saying, oh no, the outside of the boat doesn't match the turf, well, you know what? Now it does, and now it looks badass. So I hope that you guys enjoy that video. I've already got half of it done. I mean, like I said, I picked the boat up on Friday, and it is insane. The wrap looks so good. My wife loves it. The kids love it. It's...
Oh my God!
Sweet, isn't it?
It looks amazing.
This is by far the baddest fiberglass rebuild video ever on YouTube, and I'm hyped about it. So this boat build is coming together. I'm trying to finish up all this stuff. Like, there's so many pieces of the puzzle. It's just so involved. Like, it's so much that goes into a build like this that you got to take it step by step. And things are going to come up. And you're going to have issues, just like the back bench, just like other things that are going to come up. This build isn't finished yet. I guarantee you I'm going to run into some more speed bumps. They're going to slow me down. It's going to be an insane transformation from start to finish, just like all my builds. I'm hyped about this boat, and I'm really trying to trump every other build that I've done with every build that I do. I've got a crazy lineup of builds after this one, so I hope you guys stay tuned. I'm gonna get some sleep, because I got 3 days of work, and it's gonna be hell on wheels. And then I'm heading to Lake Gaston for Thanksgiving Day weekend. I'm gonna film the whole video of the Stratos, and I'll drop that to you guys the week after that. I appreciate you guys watching. Hit that like, subscribe button, and please leave a comment. All that stuff helps drive the YouTube algorithm, and it's only gonna help me grow. And I appreciate everyone watching this video, and I appreciate all the love you guys show me. I'll see y'all next time. I gotta get back to work.